Somebody interrupts you. Anyway, we serve an awesome God. If we just continue to believe, trust, and anchor on Him, there's nothing that we cannot do. Because He's our provider, our comforter, our deliverer, and our healer. And most important, He's our sustainer of life. That's how we survive every day. We live, we have our beings because of Him. Amen. This morning in our devotion, we'll have a scripture by Deacon McIntyre, a prayer by Deacon Munn, and a song by Deacon Carney. Amen. If the song is in your heart and you feel it, join in, please. Okay? Let's get started. Lift them up.
I'm Deacon McIntyre.
No, you are not Deacon McIntyre. I'm Deacon McIntyre. And if Deacon McIntyre hadn't learned anything else, when we wake up, it don't matter where we wake up. If we wake up in a hospital bed, if we wake up in the bed in our house, if we wake up in the kingdom of heaven, as long as we wake up in the hands of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Please stand up as we turn to the Word of God and prepare our hearts and minds. Please turn to the 46th Psalm. 46th Psalm. We're going to be starting with the first base. Say amen when you got it. Amen. And the word reads thus: God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, even though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. There's a river whose streams shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her just at the break of dawn. The nations raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. May the Lord put a blessing on the reading and especially the doing of his word. Amen.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, it is once again that we, your servants, have come before you this morning to thank you for the many rich blessings which thou hast bestowed upon us from our earliest existence of life, even right now to this present time. We thank you because you've been mighty good to us. You've been better to us than we've been to ourselves. There are many things that you told us not to do, but we did it anyway. We ask you to please forgive us for our sin. We ask you to bless us this morning, that we prepare ourselves to go into our service. Bless the pastor, bless the deacons, and bless the membership. Keep us in your care. Let us have open hearts and willing to do the thing that will be pleasing in your sight. These things we ask in thy name. Amen.
I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside. I won't study war no more. No, I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. No, I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. We're gonna put on the golden shoe, down by the riverside. I wanna study war no more. No, I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Not gonna study war no more. No, I ain't gonna study war no more. I won't study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Man.
That concludes our devotion, and we turn over to the pulpit. Amen. Praise the Lord, everybody.
Good morning, True Spirit. Good morning. For this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice in him. If you would please stand with me for the responsive reading. Our responsive reading this morning is being lifted from Ephesians, the 4th chapter, verses 1 through 6. I will be the leader and you will be the congregation. At the end, we'll come together on the all portion. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called.
With all lowliness and gentleness, with long suffering, bearing with one another in love.
Endeavoring to keep unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace.
There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called in one hope of your calling.
One Lord, one faith, one baptism.
One God,
Father of all, who is of all, and through all, and in you all.
Let the church say amen. Let the church say praise God. Let everything that has breath praise ye the Lord. If you're excited about it this morning, I want everybody in the congregation to stand up and sing this song with us as we give God some praise. We're going to make one big choir. Is that all right? Come on, choir. 1, 2, 3, hey. Put your hands together. I need a tambourine. Somebody who got a tambourine, I need to hear it right now. I got joy in my soul. God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back. Sing it.
This is war.
This me. This me.
This is war.
This me.
This is war.
I'm going to sing that again. I got joy in my soul.
Yeah.
God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back. Y'all sing it.
This is war.
This me.
This is war.
That's it. Make the devil mad. This me.
This is war.
This me.
This is war.
All right, now we're going to plead the shed blood of Jesus right here. Y'all sing it. I plead
the blood.
there's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's healing in the
I
blood.
plead the blood.
There's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
I've been in the storm and the rain, but the blood still stays the same. Whatever's going on, my war clothes are on. I might be in a daze, but he can't have my praise.
Right.
No matter the attack, I won't turn back. Y'all sing it.
This is war.
This me.
This is war.
This me. gonna plead the shed blood of Jesus. Let's go.
I plead the blood.
There's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's healing in the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
All right, sing it. Say, you can't have my family.
You can't have my family.
You can't have my increase.
You can't have my increase.
You can't have my breakthrough.
You can't have my breakthrough.
You can't have my, you can't have my, you can't, I plead.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's healing in the blood. Oh, yeah. There's healing in the blood.
I plead the blood.
Cause I got joy in my soul. God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back. Y'all sing it.
This means war.
That's it, Josh. I hear you. This me.
This means war.
This me.
This means war.
This me.
This means war.
All right, one time for the Holy Ghost. We're going to plead the shed blood right here. Sing it.
I plead the blood.
There's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's healing in the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
I've been in the storm and the rain, but the world still stays the same. Whatever's going on, my war clothes are on. I might be in a daze, but he can't have my praise. No matter the attack, I won't turn back. Y'all sing it.
This means war.
This me.
This means war.
This me.
This means war.
This me.
This means war.
All right, y'all ready? We're going to go here, right here. You can't have my family.
You can't have my family.
You can't have my increase.
You can't have my increase.
You can't have my breakthrough.
You can't have my breakthrough.
You can't have my, you can't have my, you can't, I plead.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
There's power in the blood.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
Cause this means war. This means,
This means war.
last time, y'all say it.
This means war.
That's it. Let's make this one big party. You can't have my family.
You can't have my family.
You can't have my increase.
You can't have my increase.
You can't have my breakthrough.
You can't have my breakthrough.
You can't have my, you can't have my, you can't, I plead.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
I plead the blood.
in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back. Say it.
This means war.
This means.
This means war.
Last time, y'all say it.
This means war.
It is a war going on. But the Lord have given us the war clothes to put on. It said, girt your loins up with the truth. Yeah. Shod your feet with God's preparation of peace. Seem like we're going to walk somewhere. Yeah. Got to have the breastplate of righteousness. Got to keep your mind together with the helmet of salvation. And nothing work without the shield, right? You don't have faith unless you got the sword and got the word, right? It does mean war. We have to speak to our situation. We have to believe God. I think we was having Sunday school this morning talking about the bread of life, right? Somewhere it tells me in John 6:51, he is the bread of life that came down from heaven itself. And he said, if anyone eat of them, will have eternal life. Will you stand with me this morning? We have the victory. We have the victory. We step down and got up, we can get up. Oh, you're not taking it in. We are in the war. And it's not about flesh and blood. Prayer changes. He said, my word abide in you and you abide in my word. He said, ask for what you shall. Do you believe that this morning? Little lady that came forward in Sunday school. Single lady, but trying to raise a child. But I want her to know this morning, God got you.
That's right.
I'm praying and you don't even know it. Those have lost their loved ones. It tells me in the Bible, John 14, it said, let your heart not be troubled. In my Father's house, there's many mansions. He said, I wouldn't have told you that if it wasn't so. He said, one day, I'm going to come back and retrieve you, and where I be, you will be there also. God is just good. Lord, move by your spirit this morning. You are the door. And Lord, you say if anyone goes another way outside the door, he's a robber or a thief. But Lord, I have found out going through the door that you can feel the compassion of others when they are going through. I know, Lord, when you go through the door, I know sometimes friends will leave you. They will say all kinds of things about you. Because, Lord, I know you are that door. And they also betrayed you. Friends left you as well. But, Lord, I also know you say all things work together for the good. For those that love you, dear God, that are called according to your purpose. I'm so glad, Lord, we are just part of the plan in the name of Jesus. Touch every heart and soul here this morning, dear Lord. Truly, you are the vine dresser. We're only the branches, dear Lord. Let your people ever have an everlasting connection with you. Realizing without you we can't do anything. Because in you we live, move, and have our beings. I thank you this morning, dear Lord. Those that are weeping now, dear Lord. Let it be known, weeping only endure for a night. But joy will come in the morning. Lord, hear our cry this morning. Those that don't have enough to eat, worried about their finances. Lord, I thank you for your promise because you are a promise keeper. You tell us don't worry about what we should eat or what we should drink or how we should be clothed. You said first seek your kingdom and your righteousness, and all these things will be added unto us. We thank you for the promise. There's somebody here running out of patience. Lord, let it be known. You said in your word, dear Lord, those that wait upon the Lord, that you'll renew their strength. We'll mount up as wings like eagles. We'll run and don't get weary. We'll walk and don't faint. In the name of Jesus, let us not be anxious for anything. We thank you, dear. Lord, I know you to be a healer. You say you was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquity, and the chastisement of our peace is upon you. And with your stripes, we are healed. We are your people, dear Lord. Let us stand on your word, dear Lord, because you truly have spoken to us. But let's be obedient to what you have spoken to us. Because you say, if my people called by my name will humble themselves, pray, seek your face, turn from their wicked ways. You said, then you will hear from the heavens. You'll forgive us our sin and you will heal our land. We need healing this morning. Move by your spirit. Touch and restore here today. In the name of Jesus, that we'll worship you in spirit and in truth. Let us give thanks. You're good all the time. And all the time, you are good. Dry weeping eyes, dear Lord. Even though we shed tears on this side, but one day, dear Lord, if we're faithful, and our names is written in the Lamb's book of life. And when we hear these words, good and faithful servant, job well done, you tell us every tear be wiped away on the other side. Every day will be the Sabbath. Every day will be honey and hallelujah. Keep us until your return, dear Lord. These things I ask in your son Jesus' name. Let the church say amen. Amen. Let the church say amen again. Hallelujah.
Amen. Has God been good to you? Has God been good to you? Has God that sits high and looks down, has he been good to you? Give God some praise this morning. Give him some praise this morning. Give him some praise this morning. Hallelujah. 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 This is our offering. It's time that you can give back a portion of what God has given you. Eternal God, our Father, we just come before you right now saying thank you for all that you do and all that you are.
Father, we ask that you just come in the midst as we receive this offering, Father. Father, it's all in your glory. 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 In Jesus' name. Amen. You're now in the hands of the deacons and the ushers.
By the ushers in the rear.
Father, we ask that you bless this offering for the upkeep of your kingdom. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Y'all don't get quiet now. God is in the house. Amen. Isn't he good? Isn't he wonderful? Isn't he awesome? Isn't he a providing God? Isn't he a redeeming God? Come on now. He woke y'all up this morning. You should be waving your hands saying, thank you, God, because you've been so good to me. Hallelujah. It's the highest praise. God is so good. He is so awesome. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for being in the house today. going to let our pastor come through. Amen. Have a seat. Amen. Keep that same attitude today because God is a good God. Amen. It is time for us to acknowledge our guests. If you are here as a guest or just visiting, can you please stand and remain standing because we have a gift for you. Amen. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Yolanda. I'm the daughter of Marion and Robert Jackson. And I'm here from New York visiting for the weekend. And Miss First Lady welcomed me as well. I'm happy to be here today.
Amen.
Good morning. Praise the Lord, everybody. My name is Ollie. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I attend White Lily Baptist Church, where the Reverend Dr. Antoine Coleman is my pastor. And I'm glad to be in the presence today.
My name is Micah Deckers, my husband, Roy, and we were invited by Earl and Victoria Schaefer. Thank you for your hospitality.
Amen. They have a gift for you. Oh, we have one more. Oh. You can say your names.
My name's Anaya.
And this is her grandmother.
No, Mrs. Anna. These are Mrs. Anna's grandchildren. Amen. 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 We want to let you know that you are always welcome in the house of God. Amen. And at True Spirit, we have a saying. What is our saying? God loves you. We love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. We have one announcement from Deacon Littlejohn, and then we may have another announcement from Sister Sandoval. Amen. Oh, and another announcement from Sing. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning, True Spirit.
Good morning.
The Lord has indeed blessed us with a great pastor. Man after God's own heart.
Amen.
Right? Amen?
Amen.
So we will be having an upcoming event, which is for the pastor. It will be the first pastoral anniversary celebration. That will be held 17th November. We'll be celebrating at the 11:30 service and the 3:30 service. 11 o'clock service, we have food. Amen?
Amen.
Well, he sound like the eating. That's right, sure do. Okay, the theme we're going to have for this anniversary is driven to feed his sheep with honor.
Yes, God.
The text is Jeremiah 3:15. Amen. So let's get excited as we go forward. More information regarding this event will come forth from the committee. Amen. So let's prepare ourselves to make this a joyous occasion, all right? Let's show our appreciation for our pastor. Amen. Right now, give him a good hand. Everybody stand and give him a hand. Well, he's great. He's awesome. Teacher, instructor, everything. He's able. Amen. Amen.
Good morning, True Spirit. Yeah, good morning. Wait, why are you so happy? What do you mean, why am I so happy? Why are you so happy? Because our fall festival and treasure and trunk is coming up.
The fall festival. Oh, isn't that also the chili cook-off?
Yes, it's a chili cook-off. My goodness. Anyway, so we have our fall festival and our treasure and trunk coming up. It's on October 19th, and it is a fundraiser for our youth.
Don't forget about the chili cook-off.
It's a chili
All you
cook-off.
want to be chili cookers.
Yeah.
I want to compete.
And we would just love if you guys would come out and support us and help us in our fundraiser, because we have many things planned for our youth, and we would just, it would be amazing to see all your beautiful faces come out and help us with our fundraiser. So thank you. It's October 19th. Yes. Hallelujah. Woo!
And if you have any questions, you can ask Sister Sandoval. Can't really see her. Where is she? Oh, there she is. So if you have any questions, ask her. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more announcement.
On behalf of Sister Patton, we are having our women's ministry on Thursday at 6:30. We would like to see every woman of true spirit at our ministry meeting, please. Please. We do have a 5th Sunday this month as well, and she will give you the information on the times and dates for the rehearsals. So please, if you are a woman of true spirit, please come out to the women's ministry. Amen? Amen. Now turn your attention to the overhead.
Good morning, True Spirit. My name is Unaya, and I'm the newest member to the announcements team. Today is September 15th, 2019, and let's get started with this week's announcements. Did you know that you can rewatch previous services anytime you would like? You can watch services live and on demand right on our channel, TSBC Media on YouTube. Sundays are always best when they start with our Sunday school to learn more about God's Word. Classes begin at 9:30 a.m. every Sunday. If you recently joined True Spirit, we have a class just for you, and it occurs every Sunday in the fellowship hall starting at the same time. Then at 11 a.m., you can stick around for our Sunday worship service. This Saturday, we'll be having a leadership seminar that will occur from 8:30 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. All leaders and co-leaders need to be in attendance. Coming up on Saturday, October 12th, we'll be holding an event called Pastor's Corner starting at 10 o'clock a.m. Registration is $10 and all pastors and ministers are invited to attend. On October 13th, starting at 3:30 p.m., St. John's Baptist Church will be having Pastor Greer as a guest speaker for Pastor Felder's anniversary. Let's come out and show our support for this joyous event. On October 19th, starting at 11 o'clock a.m., our youth ministry will be having our Fall Harvest Festival and Youth Fundraiser. There will be games and treats throughout the whole treasure in the trunk. Also, we will have hay rides, inflatable football, basketball, and more. This event isn't just for the youth though. For the adults, you'll be able to enjoy some early holiday shopping with local vendors and food. Let's make sure to mark the date October 19th on our calendar and come support our youth ministry. Lastly, our pastor's first anniversary is in November. That's something to get excited about. I said our pastor's first anniversary is in November. If you are interested in being on this committee, please see Reverend Yolanda Reynolds. The theme this year is Driven to Feed His Sheep with Honor, coming from Jeremiah 3:15. That does it for our upcoming events. Keep up with what's going on by searching and liking us on Facebook at True Spirit Baptist Church. Now here are the rest of your weekly announcements to remember. God loves you, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it, even if you try. Have a blessed week.
Go grab about 3 or 4 people and let them know you love them. Amen.
Take on a lion.
150 Psalm says, let everything that has breath praise ye the Lord. If you're a believer, let's celebrate him real quick if you're a believer. Look at somebody and say, I'm in the right place at the right time. No, you didn't even look at your neighbor, so that means you're not telling the truth. Look at him and say, neighbor, I'm in the right place at the right time. Amen. He's worthy to be praised. Ain't he good? Amen. Amen. You may be seated. Today we're grateful to be here, glad to be alive, and know that we are alive. Many have walked, but yet can't even tell you that they're here. So we are grateful to be here. Glad to see so many happy faces. I don't know what happened this week to have the spirit so high, but whatever it is, you keep doing it. I charge it to God just being good to you. And sometimes we have to go through some stuff to wake up to recognize how good he's really been. Amen. Amen. So glad to see you all such exuberated and excited about what God is doing. I want to make an announcement. If you would like to be a part of our Christmas committee, please see our new president, Sister Joanne Bowen. Amen. Amen. Stand up, Sister Bowen. Amen. Amen. We had a couple announcements, a couple meetings. A few never showed, and I prayed, and the Lord led me to her. So now we will do what is expected of us. Those that are interested, she's looking for fresh, new ideas, looking for things that will make us have a good time during the holiday celebration. Amen? Amen. So we're grateful. So if you're interested, see her, and we look forward to what he's going to do for us in December. Continue to pray for those that are sick, those that are going through. Keep Minister Turner in your prayers and Reverend Ashite in your prayers. I know both of them contacted me today stating that they were not in the best feeling today, so we want to keep them in our prayers. Amen. Continue to pray for our own Deacon DeCourcy as he will be celebrating the life of his father this week. And we pray safe travels for Sister DeCourcy as she will return back to the state to be with her husband and the family as they celebrate his life and legacy. Amen? Amen. Amen. Keep them in prayer. All men, please stand. If you're a man, or as my granny would say, thank you, a man. Amen. Please stand. I'm asking all you men to meet with me briefly after church. Real brief. It won't be long. But after church, I need to discuss something with you that's concerning me and graving my spirit. Amen? So I want to talk to all the men. That means, be it that you're a musician or whatever, I need to see you after church. Amen? Amen. Also, if you have keys, please see Sister Blackwell. Sister Blackwell, wave your hand. Sister Keisha, today. Amen? If you have a key and you don't see her tomorrow, you may not be able to get back into church without the police being on your backside. Amen? We have an alarm system that we will be activating, but we need to know who all have keys so we can give you the numbers that you need to get in and out. Amen? Now, some of y'all looking at me say, oh, we don't need all that. Listen, the Bible says the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. He didn't say exactly what he come to steal, but if he can get his hands on anything in the church, that's including you, he'll steal you as well. Amen? But how many know it's good to know that you're safe in the arms of God? And we're grateful he's created ADT. Because ADT will depict if you come in wrong. Smile, Sister Brian. Smile. It's all right. Amen. So we want you to give your name to Sister Keisha so she'll know who has the key, and we will get in touch with you in reference to a code. Amen? If you're looking for announcements, please look on the board on the outside in the vestibule. There's announcements from various churches that is there for your liking or for your enjoyment. If you want to be a part of different celebrations that's going on throughout the city. The announcement board is on the outside, on the other side of the door. Tuesday, Bible study, midweek fuel. We want you to be a part of our Bible study at 11 o'clock, 11:30, and 7 o'clock. We are concluding our talk on is there schism in the church. We've been having a great time because in the process of learning about schism, we've been studying the church covenant, which things in the church covenant will show that we may have been a part of schism if we're indulging in what the church covenant say we shouldn't be indulging in. Like backbiting, tattling, and obsessive anger, and abstaining from the use of toxic beverage as a beverage, alcohol. Amen. Different things. But also we talked about how schism, someone that's suffering in schism usually becomes a busybody. And when they become a busybody, then they become gossipers. And we already discovered that a gossiper is one that used camouflage, to gossip as a camouflage, because they really need prayer. And I don't know if you're a gossiper, but I do need prayer, and I don't gossip. Amen. But I'm learning that as we understand schism, Paul says in 1 Corinthians that there is no need and room for schism in the church. But Jesus said in Matthew, he says, the house divided cannot stand. Now, schism is an organism that's developed inside of an organism that's existing, meaning that when you come to church, many people are trying to make other churches inside the church. Y'all know cliques. Y'all know little groups that we get with, and we think we're higher and better than other folk. Y'all don't have to talk back to me. That's Bible. So we're talking about schism. So as you come Tuesday and we eat on the rest of schism, I want you to know something. If you're eating it, you'll grow from it. Because the Bible says my people perish because of the lack of knowledge. That's Nehemiah 4:4. But when we learn to do better, the Bible says to whom much is given, much is required. So he requires us to be better and do better in all that we do, because the Bible says in all that we do, get an understanding. So come out Tuesday, 11:30 and 7 o'clock as we continue, we conclude on schism in the church. Amen. Also, we would just want to invite you to be a part of our various ministries that we have here in the church. On the back of your bulletin, you'll see all the ministries that we have. You can be a part of. Listen, the church only grows when you're active. And the church only grows is when you're being a part of your church. So the best way to make your church effective and growing is for you to be a part of the effective and growing church. So be a part of the church ministries that we have here at True Spirit. Amen? Amen. All right. So I want us to keep that same spirit. I want us to focus on the Lord. Most importantly, I want you to dive into worship through song and celebrate God as the choir get ready to come with another selection. Amen? Amen.
It's so amazing. Your love for me. Your love for me. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. Your sacrifice for me. For every blessing. For every blessing. Give unto me. Give unto me. For every valley. For every valley. You used to strengthen me. I don't deserve
It's so amazing.
It's so amazing.
Your love for me.
Your love for me.
It's so amazing.
It's so amazing. Your sacrifice for me.
For every blessing.
For every blessing.
Give unto me.
Give unto me.
For every valley.
For every valley. You used to strengthen me.
I don't deserve
your love.
your tender
Mercy.
If not for your
Grace, where would I be? I stand amazed at your strength. I stand amazed at your power. So amazing, so amazing. I stand amazed at your glory. I stand amazed at your strength. I stand amazed at your power. So amazing, amazing.
Everybody say
So amazing, amazing.
You are
So amazing, amazing.
Everybody say
So amazing, amazing.
You are
So amazing, amazing.
Everybody say
So amazing, amazing.
You are
So amazing, amazing.
Everybody say
So amazing, amazing.
God, you are
So amazing, amazing.
so amazing.
So amazing,
So amazing.
so amazing,
So amazing. How you never left my side. So amazing.
amazing,
So amazing. Food on my table. So amazing. Clothes on my back. So amazing. Shoes on my feet. So amazing. God, you're amazing. So amazing. Your love for me.
Your love for me.
It's so amazing.
It's so amazing. Your sacrifice for me.
For every blessing.
For every blessing.
Give unto me.
Give unto me.
For every valley.
For every valley. You used to strengthen me.
I don't deserve
Your love.
your tender
Mercy.
If not for your
Grace, where would I be?
So amazing. So amazing. What makes me nauseous is that we come to church, we hear it, but we don't respond to it. They just sung so amazing. But yet I don't see no amazing people that's responding to an amazing God. And he's amazing to you. I mean, if you could think of one thing that he's done for you in your life lately, you should be able to respond in a magnitude that the enemy will be mad, because what the enemy tried to do to you last night, he didn't win. In fact, the enemy tried to mess with some folk this morning, and because you serve an amazing God, he wasn't able to take your life. I wish somebody helped me this morning. But if I can get about 3 of you that can say, I serve an amazing God. I know about the amazing God. He's an awesome God. He's a healer. He's the... Shouldn't take much to pump and prime you, but it shouldn't have to pump and prime you. Because if you can just think of the goodness of Jesus, I'm doing a mic check because y'all ain't hearing me, and all the things that God has done for you. The elders used to say, if I couldn't say nothing, I'll just... Do I got any hand wavers in the house? Because you ain't saying much with your mouth, so if you just wave your hand, that's a distress signal, but you're saying, Lord, I thank you for the activities of my limbs. I thank you for letting me still be in the land of the living. It's so amazing. So amazing. Since we there already, let me give you 3 reasons why he amazing. He woke me up this morning. Okay, you ain't there yet. The second one is he woke me up this morning. I got 4 people, I'll make 5. And the last reason is, it should be evident, he woke me up this morning. Just shout out, he's amazing. You ain't got to touch nobody, but just shout it out. He's amazing. Some of y'all looking at me strange, but you know he's amazing. Somebody should be shouting already, because had he not been for the Lord on your side, I mean, you didn't have to have security. You didn't have to have friends that'll watch your back. But how many know when you got Jesus on your side, you should have lost your mind a long time ago. You should have been dead somewhere sleeping in your grave. But I thank God for Jesus, because he made a way out of no way. Amazing. He's amazing. With your manuals of life, if you would turn with me to the gospel according to St. John. John chapter 5. John chapter 5. Your gospel. John chapter 5, if you're able to stand. You should stand in respect to the word of God. If you came in on your legs, you ought to use your legs to give reverence unto him. John chapter 5, if you're there, say amen. Amen. If you're still looking, shout out Bible study. We got room for you. There's no discrimination. Amen. John chapter 5, we're going to start at verse 1. And it reads, after this, there was a great feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, a blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. A certain man was there which had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lie and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another step down before me. Jesus said unto him, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. That concludes the reading. Our God and Father's preaching time. Songs have been sung, gifts have been given. Lord, we even heard your cry, our cry of you're amazing. So now, God, we ask that you would still be the amazing and giving God and share yet some more crumbs from the Master's table. Give it to us that we can eat till we want no more. Let me decrease and you increase in me, hide me behind the throne. And Father, I pray they see your image upon me, hear your voice through me. Let this word fall on fertile soil and disrupt stony ground. So now, God, I ask that you let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Oh, Lord, I praise you, give you all glory and adoration because you're my strength. And, Lord, I love you because you're my Redeemer. And the household of faith said, amen. Amen. If you would just appease me a little bit with your attention to help me preach on the subject, the topic, coming out of a spiritual rut. Coming out of a spiritual rut. Life is full of ruts. And we all know it's easy to get in a rut, but it's difficult to get out. And oftentimes we can agree that we fall into a rut at work, at home, with your family. These are what we would call common ruts, expected for us to deal with as we walk. But when you fall into a spiritual rut, there's a different type of feeling. And nowadays, there's some that can testify that the rut is not good when you're feeling a certain kind of way at church. Yeah, it's so boggy that you can't even seem to get any type of traction when you're walking, trying to move forward, feeling confined in hopeless routines, but yet you're struggling in your spiritual journey, struggling to hear from God. Do I have a witness? And it becomes such a struggle that your prayer life becomes less. Your worship becomes senseless. Your desire to come to church is even less. You're functioning, but you're not functioning. You got many sleepless nights. Your nights with no appetite. Your mind is all over the place. You never can seem to concentrate or stay focused. A spiritual rut, a place where it seems like no one can hear you, not even the Lord, because if the Lord was hearing me, I wouldn't be in this position that I'm in. This physical and spiritual rut that this Bible describes. Notice how Jesus met a man that was stuck in a rut. Not just a physical rut, but he was stuck in a spiritual rut. Because the Bible says he was there for 38 years, which means it tells us that this man suffered from a paralysis and his dreams had slowly evaporated. Why? Because of his condition, and he was in it for so long and it seemed like there was no hope. Why? Because this man, he couldn't run through the fields. He couldn't dance at weddings. He couldn't even do what normal people would do. And after being in this position for so many years, it took a toll on his soul. And I know there's somebody here that can just slip their hand up and say, Reverend, these circumstances I'm dealing with is just too much. I've been struggling for too long. This pain is unexplainable and unbearable. In fact, I'm tired of the trials and tribulations. In fact, my hair is falling out. I'm sick of getting to the breaking point. But today I'm going to take a stance. That no longer will I be angry over the trials that I deal with. No longer will I deal with temporal information and situations because I know it's only temporal and this too shall pass. No longer will I allow the enemy to stop my praise and my worship. No longer allow the naysayers to disrupt me at church. No longer would I allow the enemy to tell me I can't have. I'm preaching and you ain't saying nothing. No longer would I allow the backbiters to look at me and smile in my face, but yet I won't praise God. Today I'm coming out of the spiritual rut. Do I have a witness today? Yeah, I declare today I'm coming out of this spiritual rut. And you do know there's some folk in the church, including some preachers, deacons, ushers, and keepers, that's dealing with some spiritual ruts, and you done got too sanctified that you can't tell the truth. But if I can get one that can just say, Reverend, I've been dealing with some stuff this week, and my spirit just ain't been right. But I knew if I could come to the house of God while in his presence, I know when I enter to his gates, I can enter with thanksgiving, enter to his courts with praise, and I know trouble don't last always. I declare I'm coming out of this spiritual rut. I'm trying to help somebody that ain't even in the text. Because sometimes you just have to talk to your situations. And I'm going to give you one even deeper. Sometimes you got to encourage yourself. Let me go a little deeper. Sometimes you got to talk to the people that's causing the rut and tell them, devil, you don't have a place in my life. Get thee behind me, Satan. Is there anybody here that ever talked to Satan sometime and say, if you don't get your behind me, I'm going to do something to you and I'm going to sing Jesus on you. I declare I'm coming out of this spiritual rut. This text is for the believers that, watch this, that have paused and lost focus. Because John gives us a few ways to come out of the rut. And if you're reading the Bible in this particular sermon, this particular lesson, this particular story, you'll see he says, your circumstances are sanctified. He says it right there in verse 2 and 3 when he talks about Jerusalem, the sheep market, a pool. Watch this. Nehemiah chapter 3 talks about the porches. And here it is in John, he talks about 5 porches. And in Nehemiah chapter 3, the Bible says the porches were sanctified by the priest. Can I help you? Your circumstance has been sanctified specifically for you. That means your situation has been set out and set apart to distract you, disarm you, and alert you just in the manner in which it has been designed specifically for you. So then now watch this. The Bible says the porch was designed for omnipotent people. And watch this. Can I say something to you today, True Spirit? You got to be careful who you let on your porch. Y'all didn't hear me this morning. You got to be careful who you let on your porch, because not everyone can handle what you go through. Because watch this, your situation has been designed specifically for you. And if I can really be honest with you, some people are on the porch just to see how sick you are. Stop looking at me in that tone of voice. Because here it is. We have come to a place that we will rather, and I said this at new membership class, and I got to use it now. We will rely on sin to get us out of sin. You'll focus on other folk that's full of sin to get you out of the sin that you're in. Come on, help me out. Stop running to your friends trying to get some assistance and counseling. You got to learn to go to God, because the Bible says, seek ye first and the kingdom of God and all his righteousness. I wish I had somebody that could say, Reverend, I'm tired of calling in to the 1-800 hotline. I'm tired of calling my friends because they got more problems than I do. But when I talk to Jesus, how many know just a little talk with Jesus. I wish I had some people that talk to him sometime. It'll make everything all right. Yeah, you have to be careful who you put on your porch. Because here it is, some people that are on your porch can make you helpless. Because the text says they were blind, halted, and withered. Watch this. Come here, Job. Y'all know Job didn't have a worry in the world. But watch this. When Job got in the presence of people while he was going through his struggle, ain't it funny how people can laugh at you when you're going through? Ain't it funny how people will look at you and say you deserve what you got, but yet they want to know how they can get what you got? You just missed that shout cue. But how many know there was a man by the name of Job, and the Bible says he was stricken with sickness, but yet he did not sin or be angry with God. Even though his wife came, she said, you ought to curse your God and die. But when you're going through some stuff, how many know when the power of God is in you, you can talk back to her and say, you don't sound like no wife of mine. It ain't got to be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, but you don't sound like no wife of mine. Get this spiritual rut. It causes us not to recognize your circumstances have been sanctified specifically for you. And watch this. In your trials, in your delivery, God would not allow, watch this, he would not allow the helpless to be a part of your blessing. Can I help you for a second? If he knows the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, he's not going to allow the enemy to stop you while you're in your blessing moment. Because if it's the enemy's job to kill, steal, and destroy, it's his job to hold you back as you're being elevated. Talk to me, somebody. Sometimes you just have to say, baby, I got to let you go because you're holding me down. You too much weight in my life. You too many trials and tribulations. You too much drama. That's a mixture of stress and drama. And say, now, if I give it all to Jesus, he'll make it all right. If I keep looking to the hills, for which cometh all my help, all of my help, I wish y'all shout back at me, come from the Lord. Somebody shout out, I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. But not only is your circumstances sanctified, but John shows us that some people like to stay in seasonal conditions. You got your Bible? Look at verse number 4. It says simply, for an angel went down at a certain season. You catch that? Just because it's not going the way you want it to go does not mean you just sit and wait without being grateful for what it is. And let me help some church folk. Sometimes you ain't going to get your way with everything you want. But that don't mean you sit down on the works of God. Because the Bible says, come on, Job, talk to me. Naked I came into the world, naked I'll leave. The Lord giveth, and the Lord will take it away. Sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and say, if that's what you need me to do, God, I'm willing to do it, because I said I'll be a follower and not a leader. I said I'll be your disciple. I can't tell God what to do, and I can't tell him what I'm not going to do. I declare I'm coming out. And here it is, that the fact of the matter is your humility. It's the level of your humility that determines when your season starts and ends. Yeah. Because here it is. The Bible records, if you humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, he will exalt you in due season And watch this. Some people would rather continue to walk in what they have instead of walking into what's about to be given. And I put it in this mind frame. Some folk like being old. Some people like living in the past because you're afraid when you move forward, you might have to let go of some stuff that's been holding you down for 20 years. It's no reason to join the church in 2015 and still be the same in 2019. If you look back over your life, he's brought you through danger seen and unseen. Some trials and tribulations didn't keep you down, but God let it go. I have to let go and let God have his what? Help me, Holy Ghost. Here it is, your level. It's your level of humility that determines when your season starts. Not only that, watch this. You have to be willing to live in your season until your season comes. And some folk have gotten to the point that because you're saved, you shouldn't be going through some stuff. But when your humility is in the right place, God will deliver you to the place he really purposely and planned for you to be in. Okay, you're not tracking me. Be not weary in well-doing, before in due season you shall reap if you faint not. Okay? I'm blessed in the city. Blessed going in. Blessed coming out, but I got to go through the city first. Yea, though I walk through the valleys and shadows of death, I got to go through some trials and tribulations because I had no reason to fear because God is with me. Yeah, I'm blessed in the city. And yet, some people still ain't tracking me. So talk to me, Solomon. Ecclesiastes 3, to everything there's a season. A time for every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what's planted, a time to kill, time to heal, time to break down, time to build up, time to weep, time to laugh, time to mourn, time to dance, time to cast away stones, time to gather stones, time to embrace, time to refrain from embracing, time to get close, time to get loose, time to keep, time to rend, time to soar, time to be silent, time to speak, time to love, time to hate, time for war, time for peace. Everything got a season. So don't live in your hellish situation. Don't live in death because God said, I come to give you life and give it to you more abundantly. Look at somebody and say, it's time to change up. It's time to change up. My season, it's time for me to change up. I've been walking around with thorns on me. It's time to change up. So as I look at the text, what I saw John was showing us with this story is that the first thing, how you come out of your spiritual rut, is that you have to take an honest look of your disposition. An honest look. Because notice, Jesus asked the man what would have appeared to be an insensitive question. Do you want to get healed? Some Bible say, wilt thou be made whole? However you dice it up, he asked him an insensitive question. Because why would Jesus ask such a harsh question to a helpless man? Y'all with me this morning? And the reason is God wants us to admit your true condition. And watch this. He wants you to be truthful and watch this, not avoid the depth of your dilemma. And some folk like to give God surface lies. And you know you got some in-depth stains. Some in-depth scars that's been tattooed on your soul. Some of y'all looking at me like you've been sucking on lemons all day. But there's some things that's burning down in your soul that every time you come in, you frowned up. You mad about something. If God's been good to you, can't no devil in hell stop me from praising God. Ain't no saint supposed to be saint, but they ain't. Stop me from giving God glory because God has been good. Y'all better get my organist, tell them to get out the hallway. I'm almost ready to go. And here it is. Here it is. Watch this. Listen. Some of us need to recognize you'll miss out on your experience. You'll miss out on your experience with God pretending where you are not instead of admitting where you are. Look at this. We have to believe when we are Christians and know that you've been picked out to be picked up. If God was picked on, what makes you think you any better than God? Some of y'all don't like this kind of preaching, but listen, he tells us in his word, such as I suffered, arm yourself likewise. Let me get a little deep. Can I cut somebody? Let me cut you because God got the stitches to sew you back up. Sometimes you got to be cut by the saints because God has the ultimate plan. I'm going to heal you, I'm going to restore you, and I'm going to allow you to rejoice. So many things you say might make me feel bad. I can't miss a friend that I never had. As long as I got Jesus, that's enough. I declare I'm coming out of this spiritual rut. And watch this. Watch this. When you are willing to admit the depth of your dilemma, God has the ability to turn down the noise level in your life and give your dilemma a cutoff date. Somebody should have shouted right there, Brother Cameron, because you know some folk been saying, Lord, I've been walking in this mess for many years. And it seemed like you just ain't hear me. But what the problem is, you ain't admitted that you in sin. You ain't admitted that you in deep trouble. Is there anybody here that knows when you admit to God just how bad off you are? How many know God will come and see about you? You got to learn to admit how much trouble you in. Some people don't understand is that we would rather blame the system than to look within getting focused. And some people can't press because they're too busy complaining about the pressure. Help me. Here's a story of a young man and his mama. His mama would lay in the house, lay around all day on the couch, and she would complain about being out of shape and being out of shape and out of whack. One day this boy come in the house, he said, Mama, I'm tired of hearing you complaining all the time. You're always hollering about if God would send you a husband, you'll be better off. He said, I'm tired. She said, what you talking about, son? He said, well, if you just sit up, you might feel a little better. When you sit up, you might start jumping. If you jump, you might start walking. If you walk, you might start running. And when you run, you'll find out Daddy didn't leave you here in the other room. He got tired of dealing with the same stuff that kept him weighted down, being a couch potato. Sometimes you just got to touch your rope and say, I won't sit down on God today. I won't look down on my man, but I'm going to lift him up. Baby, you're sitting on the anointed rope. When I got Jesus on my side, I'm going to lift everything up that comes into contact. Just touch your neighbor and say, neighbor, I want to bless you by being in your presence. Woo-hoo. Let me get back to the text. Yeah, sometimes you just have have to recognize some folk got to move away from you. You done became a couch potato. I'm tired of being fat. But I want to be fat for Jesus, faithful, available, and teachable. And some folk don't understand the junk food that you share on your pew. Time is keeping you from seeing the presence of God. But how many know you got to press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling? So sometimes you got to turn down your Kit Kat, your Snickers, your Reese's, and even your peppermint, and say, I want what the Lord has for me, because what God has for me is strictly for me. Somebody shout out, I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. But the second thing he shows me in the text, I got time. It's just halftime. It's just halftime of the Bears-Broncos game. Y'all ain't missing much. Neither one of them any good. But the second thing I see in the text is that you have to stop waiting for ideal circumstances. Notice the man replied. His reply was not focused on Jesus, but it was focused on everything surrounding the pool. He was convinced that the only way he can get in the water and heal this situation was to be the first to get in the water before anyone else. And watch this. Sometimes because of your surroundings, we overlook the fact that the solution is right in your face. What did the man say? He realized that his circumstances had him there. But watch this. What he didn't recognize is that his circumstance cannot transform paralysis, nor can it transform withered legs. And some people are stuck in the rut because you give more credit to your situation instead of to the Savior. You'll give more time to what you're going through than giving some time to the one that can pull you through. And the custom was, watch this, that if you were first to get in the water when it was troubled, then you will be healed. Now, can I tell y'all what I saw in my spiritual and theological mind? This is what I saw. Y'all gonna work with me? The angel had to get in the water to trouble the water before he could get in the water. But this man's position he was in for 38 years. And the scripture said it was 5 porches of sick people. But he was sick for 38 years. Now, Bethesda is 13 meters, which means it's 42 feet deep. But it's also 14 yards, meaning it's 42 feet long. But it got 5 porches. He had been waiting for the ideal time. Watch this. If you get in the water and you troubled, and I'm in another disposition, but yet I don't really know the angel is in the water. Y'all catch that? To me, it would appear that the water was troubled. Did you catch it? If you got troubles, but the porch is 42 feet long, and you got troubled minds and hearts, you get in the water, the first thing that happens when you put your troubled foot in the water is the water begins to. And so because I'm on the other end of the porch, and I don't know exactly what Jesus looked like, but I see the water is troubled. The simple fact that I don't know, it looks like I missed out. But how many know when God is present, you got to know when he's speaking to you. So if I can get to him before I get to the water, I'm getting to living water. So now you can get in it as many times as you want because I'm already talking to the Savior. So that's what we need to do. Start talking to God before you get in the water. So now you won't be confused with who troubled the water. Let's look at the text. Said when the angel would get in the water. And some Bible says from time to time, which means when. And here it is. When you're in a struggle, some people don't recognize God is right there before you. So it's in your best interest to recognize him as he stands in your presence. Watch this. Sometimes he has to tell you about the water so you won't be afraid of the water. Talk back to me. If you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that what? He is our Lord and Savior, that he died for our sins, what's going to happen? You shall be saved. So if I tell you about Jesus, before you get to the water, you ain't got to worry about drowning, because God will become a life raft. He'll become a boat when you need him in deep sea. Is there anybody here that can say, I tried the Lord? I stepped out on faith, and he let me know I never leave you nor forsake you. I'm always by your side. I stick with you closer than a brother. How many know God will protect you? Well, my time is up. I'm coming out of this rut. I may not be saying that for me, but I'm speaking that for somebody else. That I'm coming out of the rut. If I had time, I would tell you, learn how to trust God instantly. Because the Bible says that Jesus gave the man 3 powerful commands. One was rise, then said take up your bed, and then walk. If I had time, I would tell you the reason why you got to rise up and take up your bed and walk. Because when God speaks to you, he gives you the power to do so. Can I get a witness in this place this morning? And I know somebody's saying, well, if he told me to get up, why would he tell me to take my bed and walk? Now, can I help you? And y'all help me close this thing. The reason why he told him to take up his bed, he says, because as you walk, I want you to just look back and see where the Lord has brought you from. If you carry your mat, you'll look back when trouble comes in your home. If he brought me through this, he'll bring me through that. If you look at your mat, when blood pressure comes, he's the same God that healed your migraine. If you look at your mat and think about diabetes, he's the same God that gave you a blood transfusion. If you look at your mat and think about your arthritis, he's the same God that let you walk through your pain and your struggle. I got a question I want to ask you. Are you looking at your mat? So now the Bible says, when he was walking, the men questioned, shall you be saved? Why can't you do it? You shouldn't carry your mat, because it's the law that you don't carry it on the Sabbath. The Lord wanted him to not only be a witness, he didn't have to wait not till the following week, because the Sabbath was Sunday morning. Anybody glad that he let you hold your mat? Even on this Sunday, whatever you're going through, depression, just look at your mat. God did not give me the spirit of fear, but he gave me a sound mind of love. God did not give me financial problems because he said, I'll be the lender, not the borrower. God did not let me walk in sickness because he says, with his stripes, I shall be healed. I got one question I want to ask you. Anybody carrying your mat, coming out of your spiritual depression, you can look back over your life, and when you look at your mat, you can say every time that I turn around, he just keeps on blessing me. Bless me in the morning, bless me in noonday, bless me in the evening. Oh, shucks, I feel pretty good. Bless me when I'm sick, bless me when I'm sad. Why? Because God, he's a healer, he's a deliverer. He'll restore your soul. Is there anybody here that can celebrate with me, that can say, I'm glad that I'm coming out of this spiritual rut? Why? Because God's Spirit is within me. And when his Spirit is in me, I shall not die, but I shall live. Anybody glad to be here? Can I get you to stand to your feet and just slide your hand around yourself and say, self, when I think of the goodness of Jesus Christ, oh, my soul cries out, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Do me one more favor. Just look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, I'm coming out of this spiritual rut. I'm coming out of this spiritual depression. I'm coming out of the spiritual finances. I'm coming out of troubled spirits. I'm coming out of wandering souls. Why? Because one Friday, he went on the cross of called Calvary. They hung him high. They stretched him wide. He died. Didn't he die? But they tell me he didn't stay dead. All day Friday, all night Friday, all day Saturday, all night Saturday. They tell me the record is he died before lunch and he rose before dinner early Sunday morning. He got up with power in his hands. Do I got a witness that can say, I'm so glad that Jesus, he lifted me. I'm so glad that Jesus, he delivered me. Do I have any survivors in the house that can say, I got the victory and his name is Jesus? Do me one favor and I'm gonna leave you alone. I got a question I want to ask. Can I ask my question? Ain't he all right? Ain't he all right? Say yeah. Say yeah. Yeah. Just touch two people and tell them I'm coming out. 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 Get that in your spirit. When you touch them, tell them, neighbor, be not weary in well-doing. You'll reap if you faint not. Touch that same neighbor. Tell them, be not dismayed. Whatever betide, God will. God will. God will. Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Yes, he will. Yes, he will. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. I'm coming out of a spiritual rut. Y'all ain't feeling me this morning. Somebody know they should be shouting. Because the enemy tried to take you out. But because God had divine protection, how many know he becomes your savior? He becomes a paraclete. He that walks along with me. Granny called him Andy. She said, Andy walks with me. Andy talks with me. And he tells me that I am his own. I got one more question, and I'm going to leave you alone. Anybody a child of God? Are you children of the high? Are you a child of the living God? Well, testify and tell somebody this joy that I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. High five somebody and tell them, I know that's right. I know that's right. I'm coming out. I'm coming out. Look at yourself and say, self, I don't know about you, but I'm coming out. I'm coming out. I'm trying to leave it alone. I'm trying to let it go. I'm trying to let it go, deep breath. If you knew what I knew, been through what I've been through, I dance because he made me happy. I dance because he's been good. I can jump because he gave me the activities of my limbs. But if you've been through what I've been through, he never let my past affect my future. And because of that, I can tell him I made it. I made it. I made it. Go grab somebody and tell him I made it. I made it. I made it. Woo! Woo-hoo! I'm done. I'm done. Oh, yeah. I feel good in my soul. I feel good. I woke up this morning, clothed in my right mind. He didn't let me sleep too late, but early this morning he woke me up, and I didn't have no doubt that the Lord will. How many know he will? He will. Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Say yeah! Say yeah! Say yeah! Say yeah! Yeah! I'm coming out. I'm coming out of this spiritual rut. Come on, let's celebrate Jesus. As we extend the hand of invitation to you, maybe you've been sitting at the pool too long and you haven't recognized that Jesus said you don't have to get in the water. He says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you just let me